Motorcycle manufacturers don't want you to know that their safety ratings are complete fiction. What if I told you that bikes marketed as perfectly safe have killed more riders than drunk driving accidents? That's not sensationalism. These machines were literally nicknamed Widowmakers by the people who built them. Imagine spending your life savings on what looks like the perfect motorcycle, only to discover it's designed by engineers who clearly never considered what happens when physics meets poor judgment. The truth is, some motorcycles were built to kill. Not by accident, not through rider error, but through fundamental design flaws that turned every ride into a death lottery. Frame failures at highway speeds, fuel systems that spray gasoline onto hot engines, transmissions that lock up mid-center. These aren't isolated incidents, they're documented patterns that manufacturers tried to hide. In this video, I'm counting down the 7 most dangerous motorcycles ever built, one from each decade from the 1960s to the 2020s. And trust me, number 1 is so deadly that it comes with fuel leak recalls that can literally set you on fire while riding. Stick with me to the end, because this isn't just a ranking, it's your survival guide to avoid the death traps disguised as premium motorcycles. Number 7. Norton Commando, 1967 to 1969. The Norton Commando looked like the perfect British motorcycle. Sleek lines, a powerful 745cc parallel twin engine pumping out 58 horsepower, and classic styling that screamed prestige. It even won the UK Motorcycle News Machine of the Year award from 1968 to 1972. But beneath that beautiful exterior lurked problems that would make your mechanic rich and your insurance company nervous. The first death trap was literally built into the bike's stance. Norton's engineers set the center and side stands too low, meaning they scraped the ground during normal cornering, especially with a passenger. Imagine leaning into a curve and suddenly your bike's stand catches the asphalt, instantly destabilizing your machine. Cycle World documented this flaw in their 1968 review, calling it a significant safety concern. But the stand scraping was just the appetizer. The main course was a frame that had the structural integrity of wet cardboard. The 1968 models had frames that bent around the headstock during normal riding. Not cracked, bent, and in some cases, they broke completely. Think about that for a moment. You're riding down the road and the very skeleton of your motorcycle decides to fold in half. Norton realized they had a problem and added an additional top tube in 1969 models, but the damage to the Commando's reputation was done. Owners reported needing frame bracing on 1968 models just to keep their bikes from self-destruction. The Norton Owners Club documented persistent issues with vibration and oil leaks that plagued early models. Here's what made the Commando especially dangerous in the American market: its power delivery. That 745cc engine produced enough torque to stress the weak frame even more, while the bike's popularity among novice riders meant many people bought these machines without understanding their limitations. The combination of structural weakness and British engineering quirks created a perfect storm of mechanical failure. Number 6. Yamaha VMax, 1985 to 1989. The 1980s were all about excess, and nothing embodied that philosophy like the Yamaha VMax. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. A 1,198cc V4 engine producing 120 horsepower at the rear wheel, designed specifically for the American market, where bigger was always better. Cycle Guide named it Bike of the Year in 1985, praising its acceleration while carefully avoiding mention of what happened when you tried to turn. The VMax was essentially a drag racing bike that someone forgot to tell it wasn't supposed to corner. At 280 kilograms wet weight, it was already fighting physics. But Yamaha made things worse with suspension that belonged on a cruiser, not a muscle bike. The frame flexed like a wet noodle under power, the rear end squirmed and bucked, and the front end loaded so heavily under braking that riders described it as scary. Motorcycle News documented the handling issues extensively. The non-adjustable forks and soft rear suspension created a bike that was fundamentally unstable at the speeds its engine could easily reach. Owners rated the brakes at just 3.6 out of 5, and when you're dealing with 120 horsepower and 280 kilograms of mass, marginal brakes become a death sentence. But here's where the VMax became truly dangerous: its cultural impact. This bike became an icon of American motorcycling, inspiring riders who wanted that muscle car experience on two wheels. The problem was that unlike muscle cars, motorcycles don't have the luxury of four wheels and a steel cage when things go wrong. The VMax's straight-line stability was excellent, but put it in a corner and it transformed from a precision instrument into a barely controlled missile. Rain made everything worse. The bike's reliability suffered in wet conditions, with rusting and electrical issues becoming common problems. When your 120 horsepower muscle bike starts having electrical problems in the rain, you're not just dealing with inconvenience, you're dealing with a potential death trap. The VMax legacy lives on in bikes like the Harley-Davidson V-Rod, but its 1980s iteration remains a perfect example of what happens when engineers prioritize power over handling. Many owners eventually upgraded the suspension just to make the bike rideable, essentially admitting that Yamaha had delivered an unfinished product. Number 5. 2009 Yamaha VMac. By 2009, you'd think Yamaha had learned from the original VMax's mistakes. Instead, they doubled down on power and created something even more dangerous. The redesigned VMax packed a 1,679cc V4 engine, producing 197 horsepower and 123 pound-feet of torque. It was a modern interpretation of the muscle bike concept, and it was absolutely terrifying. 2009 VMax suffered from recalls that revealed just how dangerous modern motorcycles could be when things went wrong. The oil pump recall affected 2008 to 2011 models, addressing faulty pumps that could leave riders without lubrication at highway speeds. Imagine your engine seizing at 100 miles per hour because the oil pump decided to take a vacation. The wiring recall was equally concerning. Faulty wiring in the accelerator and throttle position sensors caused unsteady idling, but the real danger came from unprojectable throttle response. When you're dealing with 197 horsepower, erratic throttle behavior isn't just annoying, it's potentially fatal. At 310 kilograms wet weight, the 2009 VMax was even heavier than its predecessor, but it made up for the weight with raw power that could overwhelm any rider who wasn't prepared. Unlike modern sport bikes, the VMax lacked electronic aids like traction control or anti-wheelie systems. It was pure, unfiltered power delivery that demanded respect and punished mistakes. Rider magazine praised the bike's performance but noted its intimidating nature. The combination of massive torque, heavy weight, and no electronic safety net created a motorcycle that was essentially a land-based missile. Fuel consumption averaged 32 miles per gallon, significantly worse than competitors like the Ducati TL1000S. But that was the least of riders' concerns when they were trying to control 197 horsepower. The American market loved the VMax's styling and performance, but post-recall owner feedback revealed the true nature of this machine. While mechanical reliability improved after the recalls, the fundamental character remained unchanged. This was a bike that could kill you if you didn't treat it with absolute respect. If you're enjoying this countdown of mechanical mayhem, make sure to subscribe, because we're about to get into the bikes that didn't just challenge riders, they actively hunted them. Number 4. Suzuki TL1000S, 1997 to 2001. The 1990s were supposed to be the decade when motorcycle manufacturers finally figured out how to build reliable, safe machines. Suzuki had other plans. The TL1000S was designed to compete with Ducati's legendary 916, packing a 996cc 90-degree Via twin that produced 125 horsepower. On paper, it looked like a winner. In reality, it became known as the Widowmaker. The TL1000S had a fundamental flaw that made it one of the most dangerous motorcycles ever produced: its rear suspension. Suzuki used a rotary damper system that overheated under normal riding conditions, causing the rear shock to fade and create handling problems that defied physics. Riders reported tank slappers so severe that they literally couldn't control the bike. Motorcycle News called it the Freddy Krueger of biking, and that wasn't hyperbole. The rear shock issue was so dangerous that it prompted a 1998 recall, requiring the installation of a steering damper, essentially admitting that the bike was uncontrollable without additional hardware. Think about that. A major manufacturer had to recall a motorcycle because it was too dangerous to ride as designed. The problems went beyond the infamous rear shock. The 125 horsepower V-twin had enough torque to lift the front wheel easily, affecting control when riders least expected it. Build quality issues included rusting, paint wear, and electrical problems that could leave rusters stranded. Oil leaks from the clutch cover were common, and the bike's high power output caused rapid wear of chains and rear tires. But here's what made the TL1000S truly dangerous: its deceptive nature. The bike felt stable at low speeds and during initial test rides. The problems only manifested when riders pushed the bike harder, often in situations where losing control meant serious injury or death. The overheating rear damper didn't fail immediately. It degraded gradually until suddenly the bike became unrideable. Despite the recalls and safety modifications, the TL1000S's reputation persisted. Owner feedback showed people loved the engine, rating it 4.9 out of 5, but handling issues remained a concern even after the steering damper installation. The bike had earned its Widowmaker nickname through actual rider fatalities, not just internet hyperbole. Suzuki's attempt to build a Ducati killer instead created a machine that was more dangerous than the bikes it was meant to replace. The TL1000S represented everything that could go wrong when manufacturers prioritized performance over basic safety. Number 3. Kawasaki H2 2015 to 2019. Just when you thought modern motorcycles had evolved past the dangerous designs of previous decades, Kawasaki decided to build something that made everything else look tame. The Ninja H2 was the first production motorcycle with a supercharger producing 200 horsepower in standard form and 210 with ram air effect. It wasn't just fast, it was violently, aggressively, dangerously fast. The H2's most serious flaw was revealed through a recall that affected 2018 to 2020 models: gear misengagement in the transmission that could cause the engine to lock up while riding. Imagine accelerating through a corner when suddenly your rear wheel locks up because the transmission decided to jam. Ultimate Motorcycling documented cases where this defect caused crashes, turning what should have been routine rides into emergency situations. Engine failures, while rare, occurred at high speeds in some modified bikes, as reported by The Drive. When you're dealing with a supercharged engine producing over 200 horsepower, any mechanical failure becomes catastrophic. The supercharger itself presented unique risks. Reports emerged of unthread-lock bolts in the air filter housing, potentially damaging the supercharger impeller, which could cause sudden power loss or engine damage. The H2's danger wasn't just mechanical. This bike redefined what it meant to have too much power. The supercharged inline-4 engine delivered power in a way that could overwhelm even experienced riders. Unlike naturally aspirated engines that build power gradually, the H2's supercharger created a power delivery that was both instant and overwhelming. Motorcycle News named it 2015 Bike of the Year, praising its groundbreaking performance while noting its demanding nature. This wasn't a bike for casual riders. It required expert-level skills just to ride safely. The combination of 200-plus horsepower, advanced electronics, and supercharged power delivery created a machine that was essentially a race bike with license plates. Maintenance costs were astronomical, as documented by owners on the Ninja H2 forum. The supercharger required specialized service, and any modifications could void warranties while potentially creating dangerous situations. Stock bikes were generally reliable, but any deviation from factory specifications could turn an already dangerous machine into a death trap. The H2 represented the pinnacle of motorcycle engineering and danger. It was a bike that demanded respect, not just for its performance, but for its ability to kill riders who weren't prepared for its capabilities. Number 2. Kawasaki H2750, 1972 to 1975. Before the modern H2, there was the original Widowmaker. The Kawasaki H2750 Mach 4 wasn't just dangerous, it was legendarily dangerous. This bike earned its fearsome reputation through a combination of devastating power and handling that belonged on a different planet. With a 748cc three-cylinder two-stroke engine producing 74 horsepower, it was the fastest production motorcycle in 1972. The H2's frame was essentially a flexible tube that bent and flexed under the engine's power. The brakes were inadequate for the bike's performance, especially in wet conditions, creating a machine that could accelerate like a rocket, but couldn't stop or turn worth a damn. The weight balance was biased toward the rear, causing spontaneous wheelies at 3,500 RPM that could catch riders completely off guard. Cycle World documented the bike's brutal nature in their 1975 review, calling it a brute with outdated handling characteristics. The tubular cradle frame couldn't handle the two-stroke power delivery, creating a machine that was fast in a straight line, but terrifying everywhere else. Riders reported near crashes due to unexpected wheelies, and the bike's reputation for killing riders wasn't exaggerated. Engine overheating was another serious issue. At high speeds, the air-cooled two-stroke would overheat, and there was a documented incident at Talladega in 1973 where an H2 engine caught fire at 170 miles per hour. The bike's excessive smoking, caused by incorrect carburetor jettings and oil pump settings, created visibility problems that made group riding dangerous. The H2's tire wear was so severe that it became a running joke among owners. The bike's power output would destroy rear tires in thousands of miles rather than tens of thousands, and the handling characteristics made tire performance even more critical for survival. What made the H2 especially dangerous was its popularity among inexperienced riders who were drawn to its straight-line performance. The bike dominated drag strips with 12-second quarter-mile times, but put it on a twisty road and it became a barely controllable missile. The combination of poor handling, inadequate brakes, and explosive power delivery created countless accidents. Bennett's documented the H2's reputation as a bike that actively tried to kill its riders. This wasn't just about having a lot of power, it was about having power coupled with handling characteristics that made the bike fundamentally unsafe. The H2 contributed to the decline of British motorcycles in the American market, simply by being faster and more dangerous than anything else available. Number 1. Ducati Panagal V4R, 2019 to present. At the top of our list sits a motorcycle that proves modern engineering can still create machines capable of killing their riders. The Ducati Panagal V4R isn't just the most dangerous motorcycle of the 2020s, it's arguably the most dangerous production motorcycle ever built. With a 998cc Desmoseki Stradale V4 engine, producing 215 horsepower in standard form and 240.5 horsepower with the race exhaust, this bike is essentially a world superbike with license plates. The Panagal V4R's most terrifying flaw was revealed through a fuel leak recall affecting 2018 to 2019 models. A defective fuel tank ventilation system caused fuel to spray out during riding, creating a fire hazard that could turn any ride into a potential inferno. Motor and Wheels documented cases where riders discovered fuel spraying onto hot engine components, creating situations where a single spark could cause catastrophic fires. But the fuel leak was just the beginning. Owners reported clutch fade, oil leaks, and mechanical issues that could leave riders stranded or worse. The bike's track-focused nature meant that every component was pushed to its absolute limit, creating a machine where any failure could be catastrophic. The Panagal V4R's power delivery is so violent that it requires electronic aids just to be rideable. Traction control, wheelie control, and multiple riding modes are necessary to prevent the bike from killing its rider. Even with these systems, the bike demands professional-level skills and constant attention. Motorcycle News praised its 218 horsepower, but noted its track-focused nature made it unsuitable for street riding by anyone but experts. This isn't hyperbole. The Panagal V4R is homologated for World Superbike racing, meaning it's literally a race bike with minimal modifications for street use. The bike's price limits its appeal to serious enthusiasts, but that doesn't make it any less dangerous. Owner feedback shows high satisfaction for performance, but significant maintenance challenges. When your motorcycle requires professional-level mechanical knowledge just to keep it running safely, you're dealing with something that transcends normal transportation and enters the realm of extreme sports equipment. What makes the Panagal V4R the most dangerous motorcycle ever built is its combination of extreme power, racing technology, and the false confidence that modern electronics provide. Riders assume that traction control and other electronic aids make the bike safe, but these systems can fail or be overwhelmed by the bike's capabilities. The Ducati represents the culmination of motorcycle engineering, pushing into territory where the machines become more dangerous than the riders can handle. It's not just fast, it's dangerously, catastrophically fast, with power delivery that can overwhelm even professional riders when things go wrong. Check out my video on the 23 most motorcycles only stupid people buy. for complete disasters that won't kill you but will ruin your life with regret and empty wallets. Because sometimes the biggest mistake isn't buying a dangerous bike, it's buying a terrible one.